Oh, yeah. I saw Dungeons and Dragons last night. Hi guys, it's me. And as you can tell by the commemorative popcorn bucket and soda glass, I saw Dungeons and Dragons last night. Ooh, what fun that was. I was really excited to see this movie because I was the direct recipient of all of the targeted marketing that had gone into it. I am a child of the 70s and 80s, love Dungeons and Dragons, the game. I used to play it for hours with my brother. And so when they made a movie about it, yeah, the nostalgia just like got me right there. And I went to go and see it with my kids. And it was super fun. And what made it even more fun for me was the fact that I saw it in the eve of what would have been my brother's 53rd birthday. And some of the fondest memories I have of my brother are playing Dungeons and Dragons with him. Like, he was the person who introduced me to what Dungeons and Dragons was. And it's such an amazing experience. It's so funny. We live now in a world of like virtual reality and video games that are photorealistic. So it's difficult to imagine that, you know, in the lifetimes of somebody like me, who I don't consider myself that old, you know, we used to sit around a table with candles burning and do Dungeons and Dragons the old-fashioned way, where my brother would be the dungeon master, and then a bunch of us, or sometimes it was just me, would like play characters in this story that he told. And when we came upon situations, he'd tell us what was going on and adopt the voices of the non-player characters and conjure these images in our heads. I think that's part of what made me fall in love with storytelling. I want to be a writer. It's just how powerful I found sitting there playing Dungeons and Dragons with a bunch of people in a room was. You think you need like virtual reality helmets and super graphics cards to bring other worlds to life, but actually sometimes you just need your imagination and some friends, and that's what Dungeons and Dragons was all about. And so it was really fun to go and see a movie about it. And I really, really enjoyed the movie. I didn't think it was like a life-changing movie. It's not like one that I'm going to be obsessed with, say, you know, Ghostbusters or Indiana Jones or the James Bond movies. Those are movies I'm mildly obsessed with. But Dungeons and Dragons was super, super fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. And oh, there were so many clever things about it. I mean, the first thing that was clever about it, you know, before I go on any further, let me wet my whistle with, well, actually, I don't really drink soda, so let me wet my whistle with something that is Dungeons and Dragons appropriate. I've got some beer here. There we go. Oh, part of the whole appeal of Dungeons and Dragons was, you know, the visceral nature of it, the eating turkey legs and drinking flagons of ale and stuff. Yeah. That was what always used to appeal to me. All the best parts of Dungeons and Dragons stories happen in taverns and stuff. There we go. So Dungeons and Dragons, the movie. It was a movie set in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. And, you know, Dungeons and Dragons is a game at its heart. And you can take the system of the game and do whatever you want in it. So, you know, we used to make up our own worlds when I played with my brother, or when I was at university, we used to play it in like a futuristic setting. But for the most part, Dungeons and Dragons is like this medieval fantasy thing, and they have built up this incredible world over the course of like 40 years. And that was what was brought to screen. And it was so clever because the movie was just relentlessly fun. And it had kind of the aesthetic of like a Renaissance fair. If you've gone to a Renaissance fair, I love Renaissance fairs. Like the New York Renaissance Fair in Tuxedo Park, that's it. It's just such an incredible experience. It's like Disneyland with low-cut blouses and swords and beer. It's fantastic. And so that was the aesthetic that they brought to the movie, and that was like fun and light and a really easy way to get introduced to it. And then if you knew stuff about Dungeons and Dragons as you watched the movie, you were like, oh, that's so cool. Look, they got a chest that's got a little monster inside. Oh, look, there he is. That's a mimic. That's actually from Dungeons and Dragons. I used to go through all my brother's books, the monster manuals, they used to call them, with descriptions of all these monsters. They have this other scene with this incredible like Black Panther thing that's got these two weird tentacles. And I was like, that's a Dungeons and Dragons monster. And they visit places like Baldur's Gate and the Underdark that are actually like campaign locations in Dungeons and Dragons. And if you're a Dungeons and Dragons nerd, it's so exciting. But I was never like super into it. So I knew a few things so I could appreciate it. But at the same time, I just enjoyed it as a romp. It was a really exciting story. It was about, you know, a group of people on a noble mission. And I think that was the strength of the movie. It had this, the main character, I guess, was Chris Pine, who played a bard. And he basically was like Chris Pine playing Chris Pine. He's like William Shatner, which is ironic because he played Captain Kirk as well. It's like whatever role Chris Pine is in, he always pretty much plays Chris Pine. And in this, he was like the charming, handsome, lovable loser. And that's the character he played. But it worked in this setting because that's what you and your friends, when you got together as player characters, would be. And the movie was all about him trying to reunite with the daughter that he'd lost. And it's like that kind of simple storytelling is really effective, because once you have that as a motivation, you're sucked in, you believe it. You don't need to have a 15-minute opening with all of this lore, like 20 years ago, the crown of Azarion was produced from the metal Letarian by the Dark Wizard, blah. No, they don't really, they have a backstory to all this, but the backstory takes a back seat, and it's all about, really, this one guy and his kind of like pseudo-sister, mother of his child type thing, trying to get their daughter back. And that makes it so simple and so relatable, and that's why it works so well. And it was so light and fluffy, and that's another reason why it worked so well. I think, I think they made a Dungeons and Dragons movie about 20 years ago with Jeremy Irons, and it was like all dark fantasy and stuff. And it's difficult to get invested in something like that unless you're really into it. Whereas this movie was exactly the kind of thing you could just grab a big bucket of popcorn. Look, I made popcorn for this video. And just chow down and enjoy it, because it was fun and light. I do like a nice bit of popcorn. Hugh Grant in it, and it was hilarious. It had a bunch of different actors. There was the girl from It, I can't remember her name. There was the guy, I think, from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Sabrina, the Chilling Tales of Sabrina. Can't remember his name. I know the Barbarian was somebody famous, Michelle Rodriguez. Can't remember her name, but all of these characters they had their own little arcs, and they were all, you know, fully formed arcs that had satisfying payoffs. And then at the end of the movie, where Chris Pine has to make this big moral decision. Normally in movies, they so belabor this point, and it was like he had to make this decision between doing the right thing and doing the thing that he wanted, and he was just like, shit, and just did the right thing. And it was so refreshing to not have to go through like this meat grinder of him making this moral decision. He just did it. It was a fun, light adventure, and I really enjoyed it. And I know that I would have left the theatre with my brother if my brother was alive to see it, and we would be talking about how much fun we had and how much we enjoyed it. So yeah, it's a great movie, and I'm really happy to see it's doing really well in the box office, and I think it deserves to. You know, we as a culture spend so much time shitting on things, and I've started to get, you know, quite disenchanted about it. We've spent so much time shitting on things recently that I've actually enjoyed. Like, everyone's crapping on Marvel at the moment, and I'm like, you know what, I liked Miss Marvel, I liked She-Hulk. The new Shazam movie came out, and I have to admit, I didn't see it at the theatre, and I know it tanked, but I was like, that actually looked kind of fun. I haven't even seen the new Ant-Man. It's like, I don't know why we've lost like this excitement about all of these cool intellectual properties. But Dungeons and Dragons for me was like the film that brought that back a bit. I was excited to go back into the theatre to see this movie. So yeah, and it made me very happy that this movie exists, and it made me wish that my brother was still around, because maybe he'd have enjoyed it. So it's kind of a fitting way to celebrate his birthday. So there we go. Oh, I'll drink some more of my flagon of beer. My very hardcore Jewish Family Services tankard here. But that's the thing about Dungeons and Dragons, though. The flagons of beer, the chicken legs, the adventures, the noble things. There's something beautiful about it. And it was really beautiful to see it brought to the screen. So, if you haven't seen the movie yet, I definitely recommend it. And, well, I'll tell you what, I'll make another video when I've seen another movie. Until then, cheerio. I'm Roland Hulme. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got the link right here you can click. And otherwise, don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.